Folding a protein into its 3D shape is something that a human can't do, but it's something that actually AI can do very well. Mission and vision is to be able to identify a disease, press a button, have a drug ready to be tested in human clinical trials. If compute comes down significantly, we might be able to really accelerate scientific and technological progress by several decades.
Very excited today. We have Laksh, founder and CEO of CHARM Therapeutics with us. Thank you, Laksh.
Hey, Stan. Thanks so much for having me. Great to be chatting today with you.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have you today. We've been talking about it for long. And finally, today is the day. And you've been introducing me to the lab and your whole team. So I'm very impressed with your work.
Thank you.
Why don't you start off by telling us about what CHARM does, and then you started, and then where are we right now?
CHARM is a company that uses AI to discover and develop new drugs. We've started focusing on cancer drugs, although you could apply the technology to develop drugs in other disease areas as well, like neurodegenerative diseases. We started the company just over 3 years ago, and really it was started based on the belief that deep learning will have a big impact on drug discovery. Back then, something really big had happened. So back then, and this was late 2020, a company called DeepMind invented an AI algorithm called AlphaFold. And this algorithm had the ability to, for the first time ever, predict the 3D shape of a protein very accurately. And this was a very important result. And actually, it won the Nobel Price just this year, actually, for that work. So I founded CHARM based on the belief that that sort of technology will have a big impact in drug discovery. Then I met my co-founder, David Baker, who also actually won the Nobel Prize this year for a similar line of work. We started working on the problem together. And that was really how the company started.
That's very exciting. What's your background before, career-wise, that lead you to this exciting journey so far?
Yeah, I used to work at another company that was actually also applying AI to drug discovery, but a different type of AI. And this company is called Exscientia. They eventually, I joined them when they were a small startup. They then grew to be quite big and actually listed on the NASDAQ in 2021. And they recently actually merged with another AI drug discovery company called Recursion to create a true leader in AI drug discovery, which is now one of the largest biotechs on the NASDAQ in terms of valuation.
And what is the core mission and vision for CHARM right now? And where are we at right now? What stage and achievement have we breakthrough so far?
So ultimately, the core mission and vision is to be able to identify a disease and then press a button and then have a drug ready to be tested in human clinical trials for that disease. We're still quite far away from that long-term vision, but I would say the current status is we can press a button and that starts off a process that is maybe 50 to 60% faster than the usual drug discovery timelines in actually developing a drug to start testing it in human trials. So normally that process is, let's say, 5 years to go from idea to a drug candidate. Whereas with the technology we've developed, which can model how the drug interacts with the protein target on a computer, it can be more like 2 years now instead of 5 years.
Wow. So it sounds like a revolutionary development for the space.
Things like O3, which was just announced on Friday, is only going to speed that up further, right? So maybe with O3 plus our technology, we can go instead of from 2 years, it now is 1 year.
Give us some perspective. So before O3, all this AI development, how much faster are we talking about already? And then with O3 just came out, what do you expect the acceleration of that going ahead?
Great question. So the way I think about it is there are two broad set of tasks. That task is things that humans can't do, right? So for example, multiplying two very long numbers is something that a human can't really do, but it's something that a calculator can do really easily. Similarly, in drug discovery, folding a protein into its 3D shape is something that a human can't do, but it's something that actually AI can do very well, right? And modeling how a drug candidate interacts with a protein, again, is something that AI now can do very well, but humans can't really do at all. So that's the first thing that AI can help in, doing things that humans can't. And that's something that we've been focused on for the last couple of years. The really exciting thing about O3 is I think that O3 shows that we're now at a stage where in the near future, we might be able to do things that humans can do very well, but do it better with AI. For example, think about which protein targets to tackle to address a particular disease, or what the strategy should be to tackle that, what the medicinal chemistry strategy should be, for example. So I think that's something where O3 will really be able to help in, and that could cut another 50%.
Oh, so it's not only the speed and acceleration, but the complexity and the conceptual and strategic side of things.
Right, absolutely, because ultimately getting a drug candidate is great, but then that drug candidate needs to actually work well against the disease, right? And that's really a factor, that's a function of how important is the protein target to the disease. So,
and how much faster are we talking about? 100 years, shorter, 50, 30?
Well, so I think it's hard to, that's one thing that we've learned from AI. It's very hard to predict the future, right? So I think next few years are going to be very interesting in the sense that if compute comes down significantly, we might be able to really accelerate scientific and technological progress by several decades with artificial superintelligence. Drug discovery is no exception.
That's a good one. And you mentioned about Nobel Price, recognize deep minds, efforts. And then you're working with one of these bright people every single day. So walk through with us how your CHARM's proprietary AI drug discovery model is like, and how that journey has been. And I'm aware you're using OpenAI as the backend as well. So you mentioned O3 and all that. So how do you see this from existing model and into the new future?
So our technology is really focused on modeling how a drug interacts with a protein in 3D. Let me just explain. Proteins are normally these things in your cells that are really critical to the cells functioning properly. But very often in disease, these proteins can malfunction and they can cause the disease. So a very common strategy is to design a drug to block the protein and stop it from working. And this can often cure the disease or at least ameliorate the symptoms significantly. Now, that challenge of designing a drug to bind to the protein and block it, that's a 3D modeling challenge, right? You need to make sure that the drug and the protein have a complementary shape. That's step number one. But it's more complicated than that because the protein is not static. It's actually moving, right? It can move in the cell. And so modeling that dynamic binding. So for example, when the drug binds, the protein might move in its shape or might change shape. And doing that modeling has been very difficult traditionally with physics, but actually with AI, that's something that AI can do very well. And that's really what we've really focused on, to do that dynamic modeling of the drug and the protein. And this allows us to essentially test how well the drug is going to perform on a computer. So we don't need to do so many lab experiments, which are the really expensive experiments that take a lot of time.
So, and how's the accuracy so far compared with the peers? And how are you standing out in terms of the model? Now, how do you differentiate the model compared with the others?
We were the first company to invent a technology like this to do the drug protein co-folding. Since then, there have been a number of other companies that have come out in the space. For example, DeepMind, they put out AlphaFold 3, which does a similar protein drug binding. And we're a similar accuracy to them. What I would say is when you then add, so that's using data that's in the public domain. When you start to add data from our lab, then the model improves significantly in accuracy. And we think that by combining the proprietary data with our AI model, we can make the best AI model for particular disease targets that we work on.
Can you tell us also what kind of data have you been using?
It's called X-ray crystallography. X-ray crystallography is an experimental technique that allows you to determine the exact 3D structure of a protein bound to a drug, right? So every single atom, you'll know the 3D coordinate. And the way this works is you shine a very powerful X-ray beam at the protein and the drug complex. And when the X-ray beam hits the protein drug complex, it diffracts. And you can then use the diffraction patterns to work out the exact 3D coordinates.
And along with your other data that you mentioned before, it could create a huge action barrier.
Exactly, okay? That's right, yeah.
Sounds exciting. So we talk about your background, company's mission, the business model right now. What stage is the company? And then how many people you got right now?
So we've grown quite a lot over the past 3 years to about 50 people. And actually, we've been able to, so the first 1.5 years was really focused on developing the technology. And then the most recent 1.5 years has focused on applying the technology to find new drugs. And actually, one of the drugs we found, with a new type of leukemia drug, has promising results in mice, where it's able to eradicate the leukemia in mice. And, IND enabling studies of drug very shortly. And, start human clinical trials in early 2026. We've done a partnership with a big pharma company called Bristol Myers Squibb. And this is a collaboration where we actually work together to drugs for Bristol Myers Squibb.
How do you approach about partnership with the pharma company, and how do you balance your effort there versus your ultimate goal, which is creating a press of the button drug discovery?
All value in drug discovery is when you own the drug and generate clinical data, positive data with that drug. The partnership with BMS, ultimately own the drug. So we will own, a fraction of the drug. That gives us near-term cash, right? So it allows us to, business, build the technology and cost of capital. So you want to do a few of those partnerships, but you want to also really focus on your own drug or your own drugs, at least one of your own drugs, and get into clinical trials yourself.
True. It's like trying to get the balance of the best of both worlds, while having the drug is the ultimate for everyone and the world.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, interesting. I'm aware you've got some very prominent investor. Can you share how many rounds of funding have you gone through? Who are they? And then what you're looking for next?
Yeah, so about $70 million. We've got a great set of investors, Prime, General Catalyst, Khosla. We've had investors invest in the company as well, so NVidia and Bristol Myers. Yeah, we're pretty well set for future rounds, fund the company to run the clinical trials.
It's perfect. It's like you are at a Series B stage, isn't it?
Exactly, yeah. We've raised about 70 million to date.
So 70 million Series B done with a lot of good angels and kind of financials. And so it sounds like everyone is. How do you see you guys develop versus maybe a similar stage of other peers?
Yeah, well, so I think to continue to build the technology, and also with this leukemia drug, clinical data on that drug. And when you generate positive data, you have a lot of options, right? You could go public on an IPO, or you could potentially sell a drug to a big pharma company, and that'll give you a significant amount to then do further technology development.
So could you tell us about what needs to happen to unlock the value? With the current latest timeline, how soon do you think all this path would come up?
So we'll start the clinical trial in early 2026. We'll have initial clinical data in late 2026, or we'll know how well the drug by mid 2027.
Okay, sounds good. And with the US development in terms of presidency, Trump and Elon and AI development in the world, it does seem like it's been accelerating. Are you seeing any favorable development in the process or the regulatory perspective that might help a better or shorter period of your achievement being fruitful?
That's interesting you say that. I think there are a few possible things that could happen, right? I think, if the the number of regulatory steps required to get the drug approved is reduced, that could actually trigger a lot more innovation, because companies will spend less money on clinical trials before selling the drug, before being able to sell the drug. Whereas right now, drug development is very expensive because you need to spend hundreds of millions of dollars to run the full set of clinical trials before your drug is approved by the FDA and can be sold.
That's true. So fingers crossed, see what happens in 2025.
Exactly, yeah. It's going to be a really exciting time for the industry, yeah.
Exactly. And you mentioned a Nobel Prize, recognized, one of the founder. How do you see the importance of this recognition? And then from what you see in the world, DeepMind is coming from your base. Do you see it helping the overall industry?
Well, actually, this year, so there were effectively 2 AI Nobel Prizes. The first was for chemistry. That was the protein folding for DeepMind and the protein design for David Baker, who's our co-founder. So that was the first Nobel Prize. The other Nobel Prize was for physics, and that was more for neural networks, and which is essentially the innovation that's led to OpenAI, ChatGPT, and the reasoning models like O3 and O1. So there were effectively 2 Nobel Prizes given to AI in 2024, which I think is just amazing for the field, right? It really speaks to the promise of this type of approach for solving the world's challenges.
That's true. And are you having any sort of reference or collaboration with the areas expert in developing your own products and technology, AI modeling?
We collaborate with Baker, who's our co-founder, to improve the algorithms they're making. We're a OpenAI technology, for example. That's the AI work is really that we focused on predicting biological phenomena that we can't predict. On the other end, with OpenAI, that's really doing what humans can do, but doing it better, right? And so that's something that we haven't done so far, but I think with the O3 style models, we'll be able to now start doing that. And that's something that I'm really excited to explore.
And with all that, how do you see is the next frontier AI drug discovery model? You sort of imagine a single day that would happen to help you achieve the goal?
Yeah, I mean, I think possibly the next frontier.
AI
O3 and the real models, right? Because these reasoning style, I mean, that's the promising thing, artificial superintelligence and artificial general intelligence. Because they are general, they can actually help you code better other AI algorithms, doing, for example, protein structure prediction. That's what's promising about these O3 style models.
With your NVIDIA's support, OpenAI's infrastructure on the fundamental side of hardware, are you literally, what kind of using to support your overall analytics right now?
We use the chips. We'll probably be upgrading to the H100 or even the B100 chips so yeah, and these are really the power our development.
Okay, sounds good. I think we've covered most of the exciting, relevant, and good questions. So thank you again, for with me.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So I wish you a very good Christmas ahead.
And you. Great. Cheers.
Yes.